Hi there, this is Kush from creativepadphotography.com. Welcome back to the Photoshop video series, and this video is pretty important. This is called as, the technique that we'll be learning is called as frequency separation, and it's a technique usually used to just smoothen out the skin in portraits. So we have this image with us. Now this particular image I haven't shared with you, but the next image, so I'll be demonstrating using this image, and in the next image we'll be again doing the same thing, and you can use the next image to just work along with me. So the reason I cannot share this image is because I sell it as a stock image, so I don't want to share it. So the first thing I'm just going to quickly do is I'm just going to crop this and zoom in, because we mainly really want to focus on the face here. Okay, so we got this image now. Now before I get on to the technique of frequency separation, the first thing I want to actually show you is how not to smoothen out the skin, which some beginners, they do it the wrong way, which is what they do is they duplicate the layer, and then what they do is on this layer they'll just go to this blur filter. So remember we saw Gaussian blur in the previous part, so just go there, and what they do is so if I just zoom out a bit here, they notice the skin here, and they'll just keep on dragging the slider till it just blurs out the skin. You can just press OK, then you can put a layer mask on this, and remember, if you double click on the layer mask and if I click on invert, it turns black. Because you just filled it with black, so what you're seeing is the original layer now. But if I start painting on this, you'll start to see that blurred effect come back. Remember, white reveals what is on top layer, right? So see, if I do this, I start to get that blurred skin back. But what the problem with this technique is that you lose out a lot of detail, so the skin seems very fake and blurred. It does not really look good. So this is easy to achieve, but the result is just not good at all. So you can see all that natural texture that she has keeps on going, keeps on disappearing basically, or just gets blurred out. So if I just show you before, if I hide this, this is the original shot, and this is the smoothened shot, right? Something like this. But this of course doesn't look good, so don't rely on this approach. I'm just going to delete this layer. So what you need to do is we will still be blurring using the Gaussian blur tool, but what you also need is you need another layer which will preserve the texture that she has on her face, all this natural texture that you're seeing. And this layer, which only has this texture, we're going to be putting this on top of the blurred layer. So it's like you're getting the best of both the worlds. The blurring will smoothen the skin, but you'll still retain the texture in a separate layer so that it looks natural. So if you're not understanding this, that's why it's called frequency separation. But if you're not understanding this concept, it's absolutely fine, because I'm just going to show you the 3-4 steps involved in this. And if you don't understand, there's no problem. Ultimately, you're a photographer. Your job is just to do the thing. So just mug up the steps and do it every time for any image, because the steps will remain the same. And we're only bothered about the end result, not really in understanding the concept behind it. But if you do, then there's no harm. Right, so I'm going to quickly show you the 3 or 4 steps that are involved in this technique of frequency separation, which will give us much better results than the blurred method that we just saw. So the first step is to create 2 duplicate layers. So click on duplicate, then I'm going to click on another duplicate layer. Right, so we have this. Now what I want you to do is I want you to hide the top layer. So, and then click on this middle layer. Okay, then once you have this middle layer selected, just go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And now what you want to do is it's an important step. Just zoom out a bit, focus somewhere, not focus, I mean just go somewhere where you can see the texture on her face, like for example this cheek here, and zoom into it, and keep the slider at the bottom right now, so you're going to see what the original is. Now keep on increasing the slider here, the radius slider, till the time what you want to achieve with the blur is that you want to stop at the moment where any kind of imperfection or this heavy texture stops to show. So it gets blurred enough so that it's not really visible. Like for example, right now this, if I press, this is the original. If I leave it, this is what's going to happen. So this is decent. Maybe I can just push it slightly more. like something like this. So you can see just till the point where the texture starts to get hidden, not too much also, so I won't go something like this. Okay, so till 5, let's say 5, 5.6. Now this is going to vary from image to image, because if there's too much texture on the skin, too many imperfections on the skin, then you may require slightly higher. So you'll just have to go image by image. Like for example, in the next image which I'll show you, which I've shared with you, you might require a higher one because there's more texture on that skin. Okay, anyway, so I think this should be fine. Once you do that, I'm just going to click on OK. Now is the time to unhide this top layer and click on it. So just unhide this and select this, and this next step you'll just have to kind of learn or just mug it up. What you have to do is just go to image. This is the layer through which we will preserve the texture, so you will see it being done in this step. So go to image, go to apply image. Then what you have to do here is inside this layer part, just select the name of the middle layer, the layer that we just worked upon. So select background copy. Okay, and change the blending mode to subtract. You don't have to understand. And in case you're not seeing these values, 2 on scale and offset 128, just make sure that you type in these 2 and 128. Okay, and once that's the case, just press OK. So you'll see that this image turn into something like gray, and you can see that what it's basically showing us is that we've been able to save the texture. So any heavy texture, we've been able to preserve that on this layer. That's what you're exactly seeing here, right? Then what you want to do is, the next step is to change the blending mode of this layer. Remember we did blending modes, so change the blending mode of this layer to linear light. Okay, now once this is done, what you have to do is come back to the second layer, the middle layer, background copy, and you have to again apply the Gaussian blur. Okay, so I know that this can be confusing, just don't worry about it, just do it. Right, this time you'll have to go slightly higher. So this time what you want to keep your eye on is, if I increase the slider, so this is the default, this is what we're starting, keep an eye out only on the skin till the time you feel it becomes smooth to your liking. Right, so even if it becomes something like this, that's fine, we're going to correct this, but keep your eye only on the skin. So maybe this is too much, maybe something like this. You can see now this, we're kind of getting a smooth look, but if you compare it to the original blur that we did, right, so this is this looks much more natural than that, because you can see that we are still not doing anything to the texture here, because that is coming from this top layer. Okay, the texture that we saved separately, so it's coming on top, so it's looking natural. So this is fine. Now of course the image is not looking good at all, but that's why what you do is, now you just select layer mask and just invert this. That means we're getting rid of this whole effect, and then we're going to paint white on this to get the effect wherever we want, right? So select this, select the white paintbrush, select the white color here, and then what you want to do is, you want to just change this flow to something like around 20-25%. The flow basically just means that it'll just reduce the intensity or the speed at which this brush is applied, so you can just gradually work yourself towards, because not every part of the skin will have to be of equal smoothness, so you can just, it gives you more control. So once this is the case, paintbrush white, less flow, and then I'll just start painting this back. So you'll see very gradually what I'm basically doing is, if I just disable this layer mask, what I'm doing is I'm getting this effect back, but only on areas that we want. For example, we don't want this on the hair, we don't want this on the eyes, the lips, anything that needs to be sharp, the eyebrows. We just want this effect only on the skin. So just gonna enable layer mask. So that's why layer masking is so important, right? So just gonna hit here and decrease the brush slightly here so that I don't touch the lips. Okay. Another thing you can do is, before you start the frequency separation process, you can actually smoothen out the skin a bit if you prefer. For example, if there's any birthmark like this that you want to get rid of, it's usually a good idea to do all that, like getting rid of the stray hair. It's usually a good idea to do that before you start the frequency separation process, though we can do it afterwards also. It's just better to do it before using the spot healing brush tool, like I've shown you before in the spot healing brush tool video. I think the nose is left. So you can see we're gradually doing. So if I show you what we've done till now, you can see this is getting painted white. So this is what is getting, this is what you're basically revealing from this layer, right? So if I show you, the before and after, for example, if I just hide this layer, you'll see the actual skin that we had in the original shot, right? So this was the actual skin. This is just the blurring that what we've been doing, and this would have looked fake, but we have this layer which has the texture. So when I click this on, so we get a combination of these two, giving us a much better natural look. So I can go a bit heavy just to save time. Maybe let's say I can increase the flow a bit and just go around here, just around here, maybe just around here. We won't do that on the hair, the lips and all. These things usually look good when they're not smooth and when they are actually sharp. Right, so let's just, I think, just miss this part here. Smoothen this out. It gets a very even look on the face. And what I'm going to show you is, some of you, purists might think that this is fake or this is not looking good. So a lot of people absolutely, so it's a very subjective thing. Some people think that this is too much. Some people actually like doing it too much. So you can be on any side. That's very subjective. So I'm just going to show you towards the end that it's not a problem. Even if you push things too far and you feel this is looking too plastic or too unreal, no problem. You can decrease the opacity slider and decrease the effect of that. I'm just going to show you how to do that later on. So it's not like this is absolutely permanent. You can kind of get it. Okay, so let's, what I'm going to do now is, I'm just gonna say, smooth out the nose. Okay, and that looks pretty decent. So I'm just gonna click on this layer, then press Control and simultaneously select these two layers together. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna click on this group icon. So when I do that, both of them will be put on this, inside this group. Okay. So once that is the case, if I just unhide the group, you're gonna see the original that we had. So you can see the skin was not very smooth looking, right? And if I unhide this group where we put the frequency separation technique layers, both the layers, you can see this is what we've done. So before and after. Right, so there's a pretty significant difference. But like I said, what if you feel that this was too much? Then it's not a problem. What you can do is, let's say you show this to the client or whatever, the person that you've shot, and that person says, no, you've smoothened it out too much. So then what you can do is you can just come on this group folder here and then just decrease the opacity. For example, if I decrease the opacity all the way to 0, that means this group is having no effect now. If I decrease it to 50%, then whatever we did, only 50% of that is taking into place. So you're basically smoothing the skin to only 50% of whatever frequency separation you did. So you can see now it's a very subtle difference now between the original and this. And if you like it doing more, you can just push it to 100%, and now we get a pretty profound effect. So you have this image which you can access from the description of this video, so you can work along with me. So what we're going to do is, before we start the frequency the separation process for this image, what we're going to do is we just want to create a duplicate layer and we just get rid of some of the distractions that we can, like for example any prominent marks like these. So I'm just selecting the spot healing brush tool, just like I showed you in the part 3 or part 4 video. I don't exactly remember, but it was one of the earlier videos, because these any prominent marks, it can just become a bit troublesome if you do it after smoothing the skin through frequency separation, because we use Gaussian blur, and also Photoshop may not have enough data to kind of stitch it together very well. So it just always helps to do this beforehand. So you can see before, after. So this, we've just cleared out the big spots from the face, right, just by a few clicks. And yeah, so we're all set now. So what you're going to do is, now this is your base layer, not this, because this is what we want our work to begin with. So of course make two duplicate layers of this. Right, this time I'm going to go a bit fast because you already know the process. So hide the top layer, then you come back to the middle layer and you go to Gaussian blur, and this time you'll see we might require a slightly more higher value on this slider. So let's go, because she's got more texture on her face. So let's say, okay, so I think this part is fine to sample, and you just keep on going till the time the thing just gets hidden a bit. So in this case, let's say something like, I think around 9 is to be fine. Right, so 9 is just about hiding the thing, so I think that's okay. And then you unhide the top layer, then you go to image, apply image, then select the layer name as the middle one. So in this time it's going to be background copy 2. So that's, remember, these 3 are the ones that we're working with this time. Subtract to 128 and I'm good to go. So you can see that we have been able to preserve the texture on this. Then turn the blending mode of this layer to linear light. And then what's the next step? You go to the middle layer, background copy 2, and apply the Gaussian blur filter again. Some people in this case also like to apply a surface blur. You can even try that, but both do the job well. Okay, so right, so again you just have to keep your eye out on just the skin. Don't look at the rest of the image. Just keep an eye out only on how smooth the skin is appearing to be. For example, this is kind of appearing maybe just too much. Let's say probably this much is, I think, looking decent. So I'm just going to press OK now. And of course what you want to do is, of course, you don't want this effect on the whole image, you just want it for the skin. So you create a layer mask and you just double click on the layer mask, click on invert, so you get back to your original. And now we can start painting with a paintbrush, white color on the layer mask, and just decrease the flow slightly, and you can just start the work. So you can see we've been able to smoothen the skin very, very emphatically. And like I showed you before, I know a lot of you must be thinking this is too much. That's fine, we can decrease the opacity slightly. In fact, I'm a part of a lot of groups on Facebook, photography groups, and anytime someone does this, there's always one person who will comment and say that this is too artificial or this does not look good. So like I said, it's just a personal decision. Some people like doing it too much. To be frank, I actually like that plastic look. I don't know why. I just love overdoing things on the skin. But if it's not for you, then no problem. If you like the natural way, then you don't even have to do frequency separation, but or you can just decrease the opacity of the final folder to such an extent that it does not, it makes a very subtle difference. So it's all up to you. You don't have to really follow any rule. Photography is very subjective that way. Right, so I think this is good. We've not touched any area which should be sharp, and got, so you can see this layer here, if I hide this, this will look too fake, but this texture layer always helps us to retain some original texture that we have saved. Right, so now I'm just going to put these two inside a group. And now that I have this group, I'm just gonna first of all see how this compares with the original. So you can see this is what our original skin was, and once we do frequency separation, we're getting a much smoother, much better looking skin. And of course, if you don't like this, then you can decrease the opacity. So if I decrease all the way to 0, this is our original. If I just want to have half of the effect, go to 50%, and this time you will see, if I compare it to the original, just a very subtle difference. You can go to 75%, whatever you like. So, or if you like the effect, then just go full. So yeah, that's how you smoothen out the skin. And I'm gonna save this image for now, because I'll be showing you in the next video the technique which you can use So frequency separation smoothens out the skin, but also for portraits it just works very well when you add some depth to those shots by making the highlights strong and making the shadows slightly dark. Okay, so that technique is called as dodging and burning, and that is what we'll be seeing in the next video through some examples of some images. So once you combine these two techniques, you always get very good looking portraits. Okay, so I'll see you in the next part. Bye for now.